Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Phil Elverum Discography Breakdown Series. I am Jake, and this week with me, as always, we have
Hello, I am Alex,
this.
listener
Oh,
of
sorry.
Mount Eerie.
And this week we also have a special guest with us.
Hey, it's Dill from the Indieheads podcast. This is the Indieheads podcast, technically,
Yeah.
but this is
what
like,
a crossover event, my friends.
I know. This is like a sub label of the Indie. It's like a separate province of the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, we're a municipality, maybe just a borough.
Yes, Maddie does not control us here. We are
Yeah.
free from his reign.
The the Phil Elverum Autonomous Zone.
Faz.
Okay, that's good shit, actually.
Well,
All right, so
yeah.
today we're going to be talking about four separate projects, which is a great many, and I think the most we've done so far.
I think so. There might have been an episode where we did like sort of a catch up where we sort of briefly discussed four separate projects.
Oh
Um,
yeah. That was end of microphones, but we didn't. We sort of only like half discussed all of them. We're going to be actually talking about these.
Yeah, and it is similar to the extent where there is a lot of crossover between these four projects.
Yes.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
just to lay it out now, we're going to be talking specifically about Lost Wisdom, and Dawn, both of Phil's like 2008 releases, as well as seven new songs of Mount Eerie and 11 old songs, which are both basically different versions of the songs that kind of show up on Dawn and Lost Wisdom.
Yeah, kind of through these releases, you sort of track the progress these songs made, and really more just the progress Phil made as like an artist in terms of like what he was interested in doing. I think like you start with seven new songs, which is kind of like feels very similar to what he did with No Flashlight, and there's even some Mount Eerie DNA in there, and then 11 old songs, which is real strange for him and different, and then it sort of gets back to this place where like he wrote all these songs on just himself and an acoustic guitar with no like recording equipment, and that's kind of like where they end up, although this time obviously they've been recorded.
Yeah, I feel like Dawn is sort of the hub album for all of these projects. Like most of the songs on all three of these albums show up on Dawn. Like I feel like that's kind of the main
Yeah.
project that he drew songs from, and Lost Wisdom was like, okay, here's some Dawn songs I want to record with like Julie Dworin, and then seven new songs and 11 old songs were kind of him like
Yeah.
experimenting with this like larger group of songs that he had written presumably while he was like in Norway.
Yes. So if you aren't familiar with the legend, Phil, after making Mount Eerie and the Glow Part 2 and a pretty harsh breakup that we've talked about before, Phil decided he was going to move to Norway above the Arctic Circle and never come back. Um, which did not occur, did not happen. Um, but he did go there for several months and kept a journal while he was there and wrote some songs. You can read that journal. He did publish it. The book itself is out of print, but I own a copy. However, it is if you purchase a Dawn vinyl, it comes printed in its entirety in extremely small font on this huge poster. So if you're like dying to read it, that's probably the best way to do so now, although it does cut out like a lot of the little comics and drawings he did that are included in the original published book version.
Yeah,
Um,
I ordered Dawn on vinyl, and it got here a couple days ago, and it's weird packaging because the inversion of it is that the liner notes are the cover. There's a picture of Phil on the back of it, and then you have that entire
Yep.
journal like as
Yeah.
this massive fold out. I was trying to read it. I read a little bit of it, and yeah, like it's all about him, or the parts that I did read were just all about him like traveling to the cabin,
Yeah.
learning that he had to chop wood like all the time. Like that was
Yeah.
basically half of what he was writing about is
Yeah.
just going out chopping wood.
Much of the book is literally about that, but it's like every journal entry is either like a lengthy post about his emotional turmoil, or like literally just like, I am so fucking hyped to chop wood today, or I really don't want to chop wood today. Like a lot of it just literally deals in the like weird minutia of his survival in that cabin. And it's actually great. I think it's really funny and like kind of interesting in a lot of ways. And I was thinking about it earlier today, and I realized like, holy shit, he like almost died like 4 or 5 times throughout this experience. And it's just kind of like a little ridiculous in retrospect, but it's sort of like, it's all about, I don't know, he was kind of drawn there by this like sort of like, I don't know, like obsession with nature and his own self mythology and like Jack Kerouac
Mhm.
and
Well,
kind of
one
just
one of the
wanting to like
things,
live this experience.
yeah, like one of the things I was gonna bring up is the fact that he really loves Gary Snyder and Galloway Cannell, who are two poets. He's referenced them a whole lot. He's posted about them quite a bit on his Twitter. Um, and both of them are very much like very ecologically minded poets that are a whole lot in tune with this feeling of isolation and this feeling of giving oneself back up to the world, not really in a like a transcendentalist kind of way, but more so in like a like an anarcho-primitivist way, where it's just you are scrounging around for berries and twigs all the time, and this is your natural state of being, just as complete and utter like isolation from any other living being. And it feels like Dawn and Lost Wisdom are two sides of that same coin.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like Dawn Dawn is kind of him expressing the experience of like trying to seek this out, and also just like grappling with like what brought him there and like why he's doing it and what it means. And then Lost Wisdom is this sort of like kind of post like, I don't know, like acceptance stage almost. Or sorry, I bumped into my mic setup. Oh, by the way, we're recording with slightly higher production value this time. I've got a little microphone pop filter, and so this is our first big boy podcast.
Yeah.
You need the production value of the podcast to increase as the production value for Phil increases as well.
Yeah, and so far it has, because I think our very first episode was like pretty rough quality. So
Yeah, laptop mics.
yeah.
I mean, most of them have been laptop mics. This is the only one in which I am not on a laptop mic, but you know, this is how these things go. Anyway, we should probably dive into 7 new songs of Mount Eerie.
Yeah.
With Well, first, can I just say, give a little bit of context,
Yeah, for sure.
which is like it's, I don't know, this EP was made and released to be sold on Phil's 2004 tour of Australia, and like it was before he had released any actual proper album as Mount Eerie. So this is technically the like only the second or third Mount Eerie release of any kind. And I imagine it was put together as part of the transition into this new name just to establish that it is like real. It's not a vanity. It has songs. It isn't just a detour or something. um I imagine he was
Right,
playing these
yeah.
songs a lot on that tour, although I looked it up. Only one set list from that time is logged on last.fm, but he did play 3 of the songs from this EP.
Okay. And yeah, also all of these songs are like available for free on like archive.org. Like this album in particular, he has, I don't know what the like exact terminology is, but basically like you can use the songs for like stuff you're making for free. You don't need to like
Huh.
get a license or whatever. I don't know how any of that stuff works, but yeah, this album in particular, for some reason, is the one that he chose to do that for.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I agree. There's some really cool stuff on Seven New Songs. It's I kind of categorize it as almost like mistakenly as like a B-side collection because given Phil's tendency to kind of just like release everything, he often does release projects that are like rougher quality recordings of songs that he's already released or like demos or whatnot. But this does
Right.
predate Don by 3 years, so this is
Yeah.
um, like the first time we're being exposed to some of these songs that will go on to be released like 5 times basically
Yeah.
on like various different projects. And I
Yeah.
think it's
Like,
oh, I'm sorry, you can go.
now, just adding to that, who appears on 4 separate Mount Eerie albums,
Yeah,
and it's on Lost Wisdom twice.
right, yeah, that's like
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's kind of why we have to clump these all together because it's like
Yeah.
otherwise we're going to be talking about Woolly Mammoth's Mighty Absence on like 5 episodes in a row. But
Which we would have every right to do.
yeah.
Can I just say that this version of Woolly Mammoth's Mighty Absence is like fucking phenomenal.
I think
Actually,
this is my favorite version of that song, to be
I
honest.
absolutely respect that take.
I was expecting this to be a sort of like demo B-sides compilation thing, and I listened to it for the first time in full like a few days ago, and I was surprised how albumy it sounds and how like put together it sounds. Like these are like clearly
Yeah.
finished products that are different from how I mean they're not completely different, but like Woolly Mammoth's Mighty Absence, for example, it's like different than the
Yeah.
one that ends up on Dawn. It's like more produced. There's like backing vocals and like extra guitar layers that like don't show up on Dawn, which is obviously like very stripped down.
You can also tell, like, kind of just like emotionally, that it was closer to when the song was actually written. I don't know. It just like carries much more pathos for me. It like the narrative of the song feels so much more clearly defined in how he just performs the lyrics and stuff.
Yeah, I can sense that, I think, as well. I like I even like some of the songs on here that didn't show up on Dawn or Lost Wisdom. You have like Two Blonde Braids is one. And then another one is like November 22nd, 2003,
Yeah.
4:45 p.m. They're I think they're good songs but I can understand why they wouldn't necessarily fit on Dawn or Lost Wisdom. They're a little more, I guess you could say, heavy. There's a lot more. The production reminds me of more of stuff from like No Flashlight or some of like the later
Yeah.
Microphones era type of songs.
Yeah, and Two Blonde Braids feels like it could have fit real snugly on No Flashlight,
Definitely,
honestly.
yeah. I want to say that song was probably written like with those songs because yeah,
Oh,
I listened to that and I was like, this is definitely like a No Flashlight song.
I mean, it kind of fits with that like weird, like recurrence in No Flashlight, where you've got like two moons and the other similarly titled songs.
Oh yeah,
Um,
right. Yeah, good point.
yeah, and I think I remembered feeling like it had like a similar cadence too. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. One big thing I noticed about this record is it feels like Mount Eerie, like in its approach, but it's also like weirdly like scrappy in a way that reminds me of like more early microphone stuff. I don't know. It was hot.
Right.
Then it like, I don't know, like the Mount Eerie album is pretty well produced. It's pretty clean, whereas this is like feels really kind of raw and lo-fi, and it felt interesting to to see that like everything got a little bit more elemental again before he just, kind of continued on in the direction he was going in, which was, more cleanly produced stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because you're right. Like at this point, I feel like in like the Mount Eerie discography or the Microphones discography or whatever, Phil was still sort of known as like the production guy, or like his albums up until this point in the discography were a lot more heavily focused on like sound aesthetics and atmosphere and
Yeah.
just kind of like harnessing sound and studio wizardry and whatnot. And so this is kind of like he's starting to shift into the just plain like I'm gonna write good songs now, like songwriting mode.
Yeah.
But it's like at this point, like with 7 new songs, it's kind of like halfway between that transition. I feel like.
In like a in kind of an interesting way, it feels like he actually started over, like from square one as a songwriter. I don't know, like it just feels like he attained a certain kind of mastery with like how he was writing like those last microphone songs, like on the Glow Part 2 and on Mount Eerie. um and then when he changed directions, you could tell that he was like sort of learning again.
Yeah,
Although I wonder if it's even fair to call like those albums masterful. They're some of my favorite works of art, but like, is mastery actually a part of what makes them good? I don't think so.
yeah, that's a good point. Um, because yeah, there's definitely something to be said about like I don't want to use the word amateurish because I don't feel like that's correct, but a lot of his music does almost sort of have that kind of like rickety quality to it,
Yeah.
that I think is like a positive thing. That's like almost like that's a part of why it's so interesting.
Yeah. We've talked about that before on like the first episode, I think. um
Right.
Kind of just the appeal of lo-fi.
Mm-hmm.
um
Anything else to really say about
yeah,
the seven
I've
new
got some
songs?
thoughts about the individual tracks. Like With My Hands Out sounds like it's from like the album Moonpix by Cat Power. Like it's an actual kind of, it feels like a real rock song, which is not something that Phil usually does. Has like a little guitar solo. um
Yeah,
and
I
it was also, sorry,
no, you can continue.
I also just noticed how he kind of really changed like the way he emphasized certain lyrics for in that early version when compared to like Dawn.
Yeah, and I want to say that I wrote this down. I don't know if it's true or not, but that particular with my hands out version sounded like a live performance to me. Like when I was listening to it, it sounded like
Yeah, it did. I feel like a couple of these do sound just straight up live.
yeah. There's a I think "Do Not Be Afraid" is another one.
Yeah,
That sounded like it was probably just, or at least parts of it were recorded live, like the singer's style, like backup choir. Um, it does have that sort of uh like one take kind of feel to it. Um, Other than that, though, I don't have like a ton to say about 7 new songs. I think a lot of the like I guess thematics of it are also just tied in to Dawn and Lost Wisdom since they share so much real estate.
yeah. We won't really talk too much about the actual like lyrical content of the music until we get to Dawn, I don't think.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I'm definitely good to move on to 11 Old Songs.
yeah. I think I have more concrete thoughts about 11 Old Songs.
Yeah, me too, but mostly I felt, I don't know, I felt like my notes were kind of harsh.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say it. I wasn't like a huge fan of 11 Old Songs, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Like just basically for context, they're I don't know if they're remakes or not because the chronology of this is sort of unclear, but they're electronic versions basically of the songs on Dawn, like for better or for worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like the songs are good, and I think this album is generally carried by the fact that the songs are good and like they're well written and they have like good lyrics or whatever. Like they're the same songs.
Yeah.
But some of the stylistic choices that went into the like production just sound a little like cheap to me, I guess. Like
Yeah, it a lot of it feels weirdly low effort, which is just like strange for him.
yeah, like
And makes me feel like I must be like missing something. You
there's
know, the context of this release, or even just like something stylistically I'm not picking up on.
I used to have this like really cheap electric keyboard like from Target and or
Hell
something,
yeah.
and it had, yeah, it was cool, but it had this like quote unquote percussion you could play along with that would just kind of play out of the keyboard speakers, and the
Yeah.
percussion on this album like honestly kind of reminds me of that, like not in a like necessarily a good way. Like there's this metronome like clicking sound that's used for the percussion on like every single song on this album, and it's like after like two or three songs I'm just like kind of over it, just like got under my skin a little bit. Like it
Yeah.
works where it works. Like there's a couple songs I think are good on here, um but like as a whole it just was like, I don't know, it just kind of got slightly tired, I guess.
Yeah, the thing that kind of drives me crazy about it is I actually like, there is music that I listen to with this kind of instrumentation that I really enjoy, or just like this approach, like, but I don't know, like using this approach on these songs just creates these like weird gutless versions of them that I just don't really enjoy. And like, I don't know. It seems like he wanted to push these songs into like kind of a little bit of a more layered and different territory, I guess. But and I respect that they took this step. It's kind of interesting context to Dawn itself, but I just don't end up liking it. And like, I don't know, with some of them it feels like a bastardization. Like I Say No just feels goofy when, you know, it's such a heavy moment
Yeah,
on Dawn itself. And kind of that, you know, it just threw me off, I guess. um that being said, Woolly Mammoth's Mighty Absence is yet again a highlight here.
yeah, no, that's one of the ones I like. I think that song in Great Ghosts, I thought
Yeah.
he did a good job on, but I couldn't really tell if I thought they were good because the songs were good, and that's just like they can't be bad like no matter how you record them. And
Well,
like
no, you finish first.
and well I was
Sorry.
and just no, you're fine. And just like, would I like it better if it wasn't recorded this way and I just like it because the song is like what it is?
Yes to the second question, but I do have like, I don't know, there's a reason, like I feel like I have reason to like Woolly Mammoth's Mighty Absence here, which is that like he actually does kind of change his delivery of the song, and like presents it in this sort of kind of dry, almost like, you know, like LCD sound system way, where it all feels a little bit almost sarcastic, that I like feels fitting here, and that I can like kind of appreciate.
I can get
But that
behind
being
that.
said, I vastly prefer the other two versions.
Yeah, no, I think that it does play off as interesting sometimes, just like I guess the kind of uh some of the like low key minimalist like synthy stuff does give the songs a sort of like edge that they wouldn't necessarily have just with their like acoustic versions. Like they're more like ethereal or something,
Yeah.
which I think is cool. And Phil obviously like has made I think he's like attempted to do something similar to this and succeeded more like now um than in 2005. Like he there's that like Pre-Human Ideas album, which is basically the same concept as this but with like Clear Moon songs.
Yeah.
um and personally think that it like works better. Like over the course of time he kind of got a better hang on making his songs sound this way.
Yeah. This is a weird kind of aside, but I just Dead of Night, this version of Dead of Night was really kind of immense to me, but not in a way I appreciated. Like it, I don't know, it you know that moment in the song where everything stops and it's just all the singers just going
Yeah, they're
ah.
just like screaming. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely conveys this kind of ominous agony that's really unique in his discography, but I I don't think I like it either. It I don't know. It's hard to listen to. Um but that does there is a payoff at the end. The song just picks up out of the blue, like, and it's really kind of goofy and fun, but it's
Yeah.
still just like kind of unpleasant.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about this. We like touched on this a little bit when we were talking about singers like a few months ago, where
Yeah.
it's like conceptually fine and like a good idea, but sometimes like in practice it just doesn't always sound that good.
Yeah, I remember him, like, he talks about wanting to make singers in Dawn. Like, literally it's like something he thinks about a lot, and when I was reading it I was like, wow, that sounds really cool, and then I listened to the album and I was like, I guess that's what it would sound like, huh?
Yeah, right.
Like, it sounded fantastic on paper,
Yeah, right,
but just did
exactly.
not pan out in a way that I really enjoy.
Yeah. No, yeah, agreed. Um
I don't really have anything else to say on this if you guys are good.
yeah, I think I'm good as well on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So, should we do Lost Wisdom then, or Dawn? What do we think?
I think Dawn first.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh I don't know. In some ways Lost Wisdom really feels like a response to it. At least to me, based off of everything I know about like that album and how it was made and how it was written, and like I don't know, just kind of seeing them live and seeing them perform
Yeah.
some
Well,
of
it
the
like definitely
songs, and like,
happened first.
yeah, and like what is quite literally a response to, like one of the most significant songs on Dawn, which is Who. So it just feels like almost weird to, talk about like songs like that or You Swan Go On before we even address any of the other songs.
In Lost Wisdom, it feels more of a call and response, I think, because of Julie Doiron's vocals as well. Because that it
Yeah.
peels away a layer of that isolation. It peels away uh, part of, I think, what makes Dawn such an intimate experience.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's she adds a lot of like grounding to it, because I feel like a lot of these songs are Phil sort of going off on these like existential tangents, and I like Julie's presence on the album. I don't know. I guess yeah, it just makes it feel more grounded, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I don't know. Do you have anything to say? Because I know I've never read the Dawn booklet, or any of those journals or anything. Um, is there any like interesting like context behind that, or anything specifically that you remember that he like talks about that ties into the like writing and like recording of this? Like, did he actually record it in Norway, or did he like
No,
write
he
it in
did
there?
not.
Okay,
I think he just had a guitar, you know.
right.
I know, I'm pretty sure he painted while he was there too.
Okay.
Uh or at least I don't know. In one of the photographs that comes packaged with the Dawn book, it like is of this little like art station he had set up where you can tell like he was doing like ink wash or something. Regardless, no, yeah, he doesn't even really talk about writing the songs much. Like, I think every once in a while he mentions that like he tried playing or something. um but more often than not there'll be like it'll that'll manifest in the form of like he will talk about something and then like later on, in publishing this, he like added an asterisk and like was like, the like linking it to one of the songs from the album. um if I'm remembering right, I do think there are other like annotations explaining some of the thoughts, and stuff, but no, I honestly, it gives very little insight onto or into the actual creation of the songs, but it's more just a lot about like what he was thinking about that led him to say those things and write those things,
Right.
um so I genuinely couldn't like pinpoint one thing. It's just such a, it's like a holistic experience. But it has like fed into my understanding of the album, I guess.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I didn't have like a full understanding of exactly like what the journal was. So it seems like
It
he kind
it
of
literally was just a diary. He never
right.
intended to publish it, and then it was just like he was reading it later and was like, "Yeah, maybe I will."
Yeah,
you
that
know?
makes sense. And Don honestly kind of plays like that too. I feel like
Hmm.
it's very autobiographical, and it almost a lot of times feels like a diary, like this whatever he was talking about in the journal is probably like what he was also trying to talk about just in song form on Don.
Yeah. Like, and he did a lot of wandering in the journal, and that's kind of a lot of what Dawn is too. Like, there's a lot of searching that happens on this album, a lot of like difficult to place longing that he doesn't totally understand. um or at least from my perspective, it seems that way.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it seems to be based in not necessarily like I don't think Don is like about him like going to Norway and like living there, but like I think just from what I can pick up from the lyrics on the album, like the things that he's trying to tackle in these songs like kind of tie into the reasons he like went to Norway in the first place, like did his kind of
Yes.
like sabbatical.
Yeah.
And like you're like you said, a lot of it does feel like him just kind of like which he's always kind of done this, but like asking these like existential questions, I guess. I don't feel like there's necessarily like one concept that he's trying to tackle. Like there's definitely a lot of things he's diving into, it seems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are a whole lot of rhetorical moments in the lyrics themselves, but also in the ways that a lot of these songs end. One in particular, I'm trying to think. I think is it "I Say No"? I think that just cuts
Yeah.
off, and he just lets that silence kind of creep in. And there's a few moments like that where he cuts out the instrumentation, he cuts off the singing, and he just moves on to the next fragment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big just to stay on that topic. I'm a big fan of "I Say No." That's maybe one of my favorite songs on Don.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I wish I fully understood what he was like trying to say because it sounds really good. I was like reading along the lyrics last night and
Well,
I was like, this is a mystery to me. It's like very enigmatic. It sounds
yeah.
like sad and pessimistic.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I feel like this song has hidden power levels that I haven't unlocked yet.
So I was feeling the same way, and I've decided that that's part of the point here. Like, I think in a lot of cases, like, he was kind of like almost grappling with the personal repercussions of like thinking about this stuff, of like tackling these like, big topics and kind of self mythology and stuff, and like kind of like what that means for him as a person. He's like he's I they kind of talked about this in that Tiny Mixtapes review you mentioned,
Yes.
which I went and read, which is shit, I lost my train of thought.
Um, I'll just if I can, I'll just read that little paragraph because I just thought it was a really funny anecdote.
Yeah.
Um, it's basically like the reviewer from Tiny Mixtapes. apparently.
Oh no, I remembered. I remember what they said was was that the questioning itself has come into question on this album,
Which
which
is
I think
it's a
is
wonderful
very
line.
apt.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful. I think when we think of at least some of Phil's earlier stuff, we think about it kind of enveloping this particular space, and we think of it occupying, this particular aesthetic and this particular place and time where Phil is working with soundscape in such a way that it pushes out this atmosphere and this setting and this environment. And in Dawn, he's intentionally stripping that away for not for the listener, but for obviously for himself as an artist searching for these sort of existential longings, these existential questions.
yeah. That does tie back into the quote that Jake wanted to read, which you should totally still read because it is great.
Yeah, sure. So he this reviewer apparently saw Phil Elverum play a set in Minneapolis, I'm assuming like several years ago. And it says so yeah, a few years back he capped off a live set in Minneapolis with this peculiar ending, talking about I Say No. With uncomfortable shuffling and puzzled reactions, the audience stayed silent for what seemed like an eternity as Elverum sat motionless, eyes closed. It was an excruciating yet delicate moment that seemed to slow everything down to a snail pace. I didn't want it to end. The crowd eventually gave in, awkwardly, with hesitant clapping, but that moment, even in retrospect, felt beyond time. I just think just the imagery of that, I think is I just think it's kind of funny for one, like just the mental image of course Phil
Yeah,
would end his
Mhm.
set on the song that it just ends with like 30 seconds of silence, and just the idea of the audience like not knowing what to do or like how to react, and it being a kind of awkward moment, but also being that is Phil's music and like how he kind of is as like a performer.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
like kind of walks that line of being like delicate and interesting, and then also just like awkward silence.
It's really poetic, both in just kind of a on the surface way, but also just like Phil's journey as like an artist, and I don't like as a person in the way just that we've like seen him like asking these questions, and kind of like how that evolved. Like we don't know him as a person obviously, but just kind of like it is it is almost poetic for him to like after like albums like The Glow Part 2 and Mount Eerie, for him to just be able to sit with that and really kind of revel in that silence and like really embrace it. I feel like that is part of the work here, like that it I don't know. It almost like gets into performance art for me, I guess. Like I don't know. I really love that quote. It made me decide that reviews are good actually.
It shows a level of maturity, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Phil knew like what he was doing there.
Oh
Like,
yeah. No, I genuinely think that was a peaceful moment for him.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I was gonna say something. One, okay, I do remember. Not this isn't exactly what I was gonna say, but just kind of like scrolling through my notes here. A fun thing I picked up on that I didn't actually know before is the song "Cold Mountain." There's kind of a lot of layers to it. Apparently, there's a ninth century Chinese poet named Han Shan, and a lot of the lyrics for Cold Mountain are like taken directly from his poems. And Han Shan actually named himself after a mountain near his home called Han Shan, which actually translates to Cold Mountain in Chinese. And there's this, I think, like cool, like mirror there between that and what like Phil kind of did in his like by changing his name to Mount Eerie, like a mountain near his home. It kind of ties into his feelings, I think, of like leaving where he's from and moving to like this new weird place and all that.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so I just thought that was kind of like a cool like connection there.
It is. I agree. I'm sorry. I'm just like trying to think of what we do next, I guess.
But it is different. It is sort of difficult to talk about this album because, I mean, I just feel like in general with a lot of Phil's music, and for me personally, it's a lot easier for me to articulate some of the more like objective things. Like this is how this album sounds, and this is why it sounds cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is sort of stripped away on Don. It's like a very very stripped down album, literally just like Phil and his acoustic guitar for basically every track. Um, so you're just kind of left to dive into the thematic content of Dawn, which is all very like abstract and kind of existential, and it's hard to like pry
Yeah.
into
Mm.
in such a specific way as usual.
It's also it's so easy to let Dawn wash over you. Like I this is one of my most listened to Phil albums. Like it is. And yet like I feel like up until now I really had such a thin grasp on like what it's all about, you know? And even still I don't feel totally certain about it or anything. But just like even though I've literally read the book, you know, the like 148-page journal from the time this was written, I still like for a long time it was just very meditative, and I wasn't thinking so much literally about the work in the same way that I would a lot of his other stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean like I feel like there's songs on here where I would really need to like sit down and kind of like intentionally try to parse through exactly what he's trying to say, because it seems like he's tackling all sorts of different things from all sorts of different angles. Like a lot of it is like personal, like probably about some sort of like relationship, and then a lot of it gets into like this existential stuff, talking about nature. Like a lot of it is like even with the first song, like It Wasn't the Hunting, it's like kind of about it's like very meta in a way, like him moving out into the frigid cold and trying to like brave the wilderness and like become a stronger person that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then some of it is about like just like normal life. Like in one of the songs he talks about like abandoning like the girls in shows or whatever. There's just like a lot of different uh kind of places he goes, I guess. There's not really like one overarching like theme that is like this is what Dawn is about.
Well, I disagree actually. I don't think you're like totally off base or something, but I do think like it is like kind of, or at least much of it really deals in just him trying to find this sort of like surrender, I guess, like a sort of inner peace. And by surrender I mean like acceptance of all these difficult things rather than, I don't know,
That actually
just
totally
like
makes sense.
moving on in some way. Like on I Say No, he directly speaks to this, which is he's like, sorry I didn't pipe up about this earlier when we were talking about that song, but he he like, you know, some people say arise, 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 live, friend, live. I say die. I say shade yourself. I say shine what precious light you have into caves. Like, you know, and I don't want to quote the whole song, but just those lyrics deal in it. He isn't really despairing. Actually, he's just like, uh the really important one is find life where you foolishly saw graves. Like that to me gets to the core of it, which is just like, and he talks about it on Lost Wisdom and Lost Wisdom 2, you know, look into the fire, look right into the fire, which is just like, you know, live with this, accept it, let it be part of you, you
Yeah,
know.
Hmm.
that's
There,
that's definitely a good point. Um, and I completely agree with that. I think I meant more just like that concept in itself is sort of like a hard one to pin down, and so it seems like it
Yeah.
can kind of like refract off into a bunch of different ways to explore that central idea. But that's I totally agree with that. Like I think he also, and this is getting a little bit into Lost Wisdom, but on the song "Oh My Heart," there's this line where he's like, "My will to live hides implied in my heart beating, like without looking for fulfillment, but just accepting it." Kind of
Yeah.
like, I guess you could say it has like a sort of Zen feeling to it. This kind of like finding fulfillment by not looking for fulfillment anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of
Yeah.
runs through a lot of these songs.
Yeah. There's a dichotomy between those two versions where I think with Dawn there's just this general muck that hangs over the record, this kind of frustration that Phil is feeling. And I think part of that comes through with the way that he's using the instrumentation and the way that he's arranging these songs is disarming himself. It's not his usual it's not a usual sound palette. And I think he's trying to
Yeah.
it feels like he's forcing himself sometimes to go minimal when he doesn't want to. And so to use "Oh My Heart" as like to use those two different versions when he's singing it just as himself, it's like he's trying to convince himself to do this. You know, he's
Right.
trying to convince himself to allow his heart to, you know, live as it is, and all the other stuff that was
Yeah.
in those lyrics.
That's that's apt. Like in Dawn, he understands these concepts, but it's hard for him to really like take them in. Whereas Lost Wisdom feels like an expression of kind of, actually like sort of experiencing these things, like actually like finding this sort of, I don't really want to call it inner peace, but that's just what we'll say.
This like
Yeah.
Because I can't
contentment.
think of a better. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I said it earlier. Surrender. I feel like surrender is a really good word for it.
hmm And again, I think part of that just goes back to Julie Doran's backing vocals. I think on Lost Wisdom, it helps to kind of carry that weight, kind of share the
Yeah.
burden in a way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There is Don does give me that sense of like difficulty in a weird way where it's almost like he had to like force these songs out like kind of painfully almost like it was like a really
Yeah.
like it feels like a harsh process honestly like and yeah and just within in comparison with Don where it I guess is not so I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
Arduous, you know.
Yes, yeah. Um are there any like particular songs that you'd want to kind of like dive into because I think some of my favorite like all-time Phil Elverum songs I think show up on both Dawn and Lost Wisdom.
Yeah, sure. I like I don't know. Voice in headphones is a pretty big one.
I was
And
about to say that.
that's a well accepted fan favorite from
Oh yeah.
what I'm aware.
Yeah, literally about I was listening to this interview with Phil Elverum a long time ago and he was basically saying that it's like the song is about him not being able to listen to Undone by Bjork without crying.
Yeah, well, there is a journal entry that seems to be the genesis of this song in Dawn, where he's like listening to Bjork just over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great song, and like Phil has talked a fair amount about his discomfort with the weird kind of artist listener power dynamic, like he won't sign things, he doesn't like to you know participate in that sort of culture, um just because I don't know, it's uncomfortable for him, and understandably so. Like artists are people, they are not like mythical beings in the way they're kind of propped up to be sometimes. uh but I think it's just like it sort of tackles this like awkwardness of like feeling like you're understood by someone you don't know at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like yeah, like just the "Who are you" voice in headphones. Like, how did you do this? How did you know? Like, I've never met you, but
Yeah.
like,
I love the image too of of like him saying, "Come on, welcome in. Who are you? Who are you who's come to fill this room? Come on, welcome in." Like I just like that idea of like just like the vague image of like a song being just sort of like a warm cloud that comes into your house.
yeah, it's interesting too because you're right. Just the with the kind of artist listener like dynamic that exists. That I feel like um, I mean, he obviously has collaborated with like a lot of musicians in the past, but I feel like Bjork specifically is like one of the only artists. I feel like he talks about Bjork a couple times in like a couple different songs. I think he like covered a Bjork song on one of the Microphones albums. So it's like interesting that like she's the artist that gets like brought up so frequently,
Yeah. Well, I
which is
kind of
fair.
a little bit unrelated, but it's kind of interesting like that he was a huge fan of Julie Dwarin before Lost Wisdom
That's true.
occurred. Like her band Eric's Trip and I think her solo work too was like a teenage obsession for him. So it's kind of interesting. I wonder about the dynamic that was probably first at play when they like met, and I don't know what led to them eventually playing together and stuff. Now I mean I must imagine it's pretty normal, like they've known each other for years.
Right. Yeah. That is interesting because yeah, he covered an Eric Strip song on like It
Yeah,
Was Hot, We Stayed
Sand.
in the Water. Yeah, Sand. Um, so yeah, that is fun. I feel like at this point they're probably more sort of contemporary with each other, but
Yeah.
I do wonder how that came about. I'm assuming if I had to guess, it would say it was Phil who was like one to record this album. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder about how they met too, or like I don't know.
it's kind of it's kind of crazy just because to me they're like just such the perfect duo. Like their voices are so
Yeah.
distinct and yet
Well,
also
she
complement each
she
other
was
so
a
well.
she was a huge influence on him and how he and how he
That's a
did
good point.
things.
Yeah, so I guess it does make
So
sense in that way.
yeah,
I guess just to get back to some,
I saw them live on this most recent tour, and it was really lovely.
I'm
Um,
sure it was.
yeah, their stage banter was very enjoyable. um, they also just both kicked their shoes like far to the other side of the stage at like the same time. At some point, they were both wearing like flip flops. I don't know. It was just a weird, funny moment. No, they were not wearing flip flops. They were wearing shoes. It was winter, but it was like really hot in the venue for some reason. Um.
Interesting.
Anyway, that's not super important.
Um, I just want to give a shout out to Great Ghosts because I think
Yes.
I don't really know like what to say about it specifically, other than that it's just like such a good song.
Yeah.
It's just so good and so like it's just a really beautiful song. I don't know. Great Ghosts is like I think the like when I was first getting into Dawn like several years ago, um, I feel like you definitely kind of like need time to sit with it.
Yeah.
It might not be
Oh
true for
yeah.
everybody, but it definitely took me a few listens to like kind of really latch on to a lot of these songs. But Great Ghosts like very immediately, just like one of my favorite Phil songs. Kind of like the imagery of him just like braving the wilderness and like coming back after like stronger and like with a beard and like a child or something. Just
Yeah. New
I don't
baby
know.
on my back. But from where?
Yeah, I'm just imagining like Phil with like a long gray beard and like long hair. He's like carrying like a club or something.
Like literally his Twitter avatar, except not a baby.
It was
Yeah, that's like a
a
fusion.
it was a
I
Samurai
wonder
Jack
where that
episode.
came from.
Yeah, no, that was a Samurai Jack episode. I'm pretty sure where he finds his child in the woods and he just brings it along with him.
Really funny.
That's funny. I wonder. I mean, this had to have been written before Samurai Jack was made, right?
Samurai Jack was like, I think early 2000s, like 2003, 2004.
2001.
Yeah.
Yo, maybe Phil
Yeah.
was hip to that Samurai Jack shit.
He will occasionally put out some weird like film recommendations on his Twitter.
Yeah.
Like I remember the big one that has stayed with me always is when he said that he watched Jackie for like the first time in like 5 years. And someone asked him what he thought about it, and he was like, "It was great. It was about someone's husband dying."
Oh no.
Do we want to
Oh,
move on to Lost Wisdom or?
I'm just on his Twitter now.
I'm good to move on to Lost Wisdom. I was just gonna say one that I
Oh.
think his Twitter avatar might be a sort of like fusion of himself coming out of the cave with a beard and the baby on his back together.
It's like
Can we reverse image search for Phil's?
yeah, where did this come from?
I like to think that he just created it.
This is like no, this is like one of the members of ZZ Top as like a
Yeah.
child.
That's actually really funny.
No, that
That's
can't be it. Cause what's that like cowl that it's wearing?
Yeah, it's like a vampire cloak or something. It's a lot to unpack here, folks. But yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm personally good to move on to Lost Wisdom because I feel like they are very interconnected anyway, and
No,
we've
no,
kind of
I
already been talking
agree
about both.
too.
I do just want to mention Goodbye Hope since it's not on Lost Wisdom, and that's just another song that I think is really good. And I
Yeah.
have like nothing more to really add to it other than that I think it's like one of his prettiest songs. Kind of a somber note to end Dawn on,
Yeah.
but you know, Dawn is sort of a somber album in general, so I guess it makes sense.
I think Who is my favorite. Or it's becoming my favorite at least. About same where I don't have anything particular to add about it. It's just really pretty and I love the, ending line. Just I say who.
I have somewhat of a hot take that it might not actually be that much of a hot take, but I like obviously I love all the songs on Dawn, but after just listening to both Dawn and Lost Wisdom a lot this week, I sort of noticed that when I was listening to the Dawn songs that were also featured on Lost Wisdom, I was kind of like, man, like I sort of miss like Julie's voice being on this, like those versions just do it for me more, I guess. Like I was listening to Who on Dawn, and I was like, this is so good, but it would just be slightly better if it was the Lost Wisdom version. And then I started thinking of like, man, imagine if like every song on Dawn just had Julie Doran on it, and how like good that would be.
I think it'd be very different though.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
it would fundamentally change what the album is.
Some of those songs are like, yeah, they're very personal in a way. Like,
yeah,
I'm not picturing Julie Doran singing like Moon sequel or anything like that.
That would be funky.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I get what you're saying totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, should we just dive into Lost Wisdom? I think
sure.
So yeah, Lost Wisdom is an album. It came out on October 7th, 2008.
Wow.
Yeah. Apparently it was recorded in about a week, which I think is part of me is like thinks that's kind of crazy, but I mean, it is a pretty like low key 24-minute album, so it's I guess not that surprising that it was recorded in such a quick span of time.
Yep.
And Lost Wisdom 2 or part 2 was recorded that way too.
Yeah, and I guess there's a sort of I don't know, like sort of I'm looking for. I can't think of the word. I can't think of words today. There's like a sort of it sounds like it was recorded in a short amount of time, but in a good way. You know what I mean? Like it has a sort of like spontaneous edge to it.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure this was my first Mount Eerie album that I actually got into because of the length being so short. And it also,
Honestly, no, sorry.
yeah, no. And I think it does help that it's also, again, just like Dawn, um, one of his most minimal albums sound-wise, compositionally. Um,
When what was your history, or what's your history with Phil, with his music?
so I got into him. The first album that I actually listened to him was Sauna when it came out. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, because that I was starting to actually get into music, and I knew that the microphones had this sort of like legendary aspect to it, so that's why I stayed away from the Glow Part 2 for a while. But by the time that Sonic came out, I didn't realize that that it was all just Phil. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of picked and choose which of his albums to listen to on and off throughout high school, and then by the time I got into college, that's when I started to actually dive deeper into all of his work because
Right.
I think the more I matured and the more I found artists that have similar styles. It's like, well, it's like, man, wouldn't it be just awful if I just went all in on this one man who has 500 releases on Bandcamp and I could spend hours combing over. So yeah, Lost Wisdom was the big record that I really dove deep into. Um, it it's a wonderful album, I will say. It's a wonderful album to spend the night alone sleeping in a uh, uh, you know your campus's music hall too, and just wake up at like
Yeah.
6 in the morning with the sun coming up, and it's like it's early November and it's crisp, and you just had
I
This is very specific.
yeah.
I think there's something very fitting. Like Lost Wisdom being an introduction to Phil's discography makes complete sense to me because, for one, it's like I'm a big fan of like really like kind of concise, short 25-minute albums. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a millennial, so my attention span is like completely fucked. So like
We will
it,
do a Pink Moon retrospect
yeah.
someday, Jake and I. I literally bought a textbook for it. I bought the
I
fucking
also
Nick
have a
Drake
Pink Moon book.
textbook.
That's why we haven't done it, is because we have like all this
Yeah.
extracurricular work to do now. That just makes it so much harder.
Yeah.
It's like I have a book, so it's like I have to read it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm just a big fan of 25-minute albums like that. I just love how like concise that is, and especially 25-minute albums where like every song on it is so good. And like obviously Phil is also will make an hour and a half long like epic album, but I don't know. There's always something that I've really enjoyed about these kind of like bite-sized like album EP hybrid type things. And I
Yeah.
think Lost Wisdom does it perfectly. Like, there's not a single bad song on Lost Wisdom, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. I think it's just very, very consistent, high quality songs the whole time.
I'm thinking, and it's kind of interesting. Like, I feel like in many ways this is considered the bigger release when compared to Dawn. Like,
I would
I
agree with
don't know.
that.
Yeah.
I see this one talked about so much more, and yet in a way you could call it like an EP, you know? Like, I don't know, like on paper, like, it feels like a side project almost, where Dawn is like, it was released first, and after this like short like 24-minute thing, uh the artist released a non-collaborative 50-minute album,
Yeah,
Hmm.
like, I
it
don't know,
sort of.
it's interesting how that worked out.
I think it sort of makes sense in the fact that like, unless like, obviously we're sort of big Phil Elverum fans. Like I'm obviously willing to sit down and listen to like 45 minutes of just him with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah,
But I think Lost Wisdom is probably in general a little more palatable than Dawn, just to like
that
the
is
average
true.
person who's not
Yeah,
necessarily into Phil's music.
Hmm.
It's like a little more fleshed out.
yeah.
Um,
Unless you're like specifically like a real folk head, like that
yeah,
is
Yeah.
definitely the one I feel like more people could be drawn towards.
yeah, and
I've shown this record to several different friends, and strangely enough, the thing that has always got them hooked is just the album art alone, which is just,
yeah, it's so
it's
good.
so good.
I have Lost Wisdom on. I have like the vinyl version of Lost Wisdom, and there is a big like poster of I don't. It's not the exact house that's on the album cover, but it's like
It's a
this big.
different sketch, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like just all the artwork in general with kind of this Lost Wisdom Dawn stuff is really well done, and I guess he kind of always pays attention to that kind of stuff. But yeah, love the artwork. Also, I just want to give a shout out to the the guitar work by Fred Squire. Not really familiar with him apart from what he did here, but I think the like electric guitar that is throughout this album is like super essential. Like it helps it so much.
Yeah.
Just to add like that extra little layer of like texture and color. Because it's still like a very stripped down album, but even just like the presence of an electric guitar running through most of these songs, just kind of I feel like it separates it from like Don and from
Yeah.
the other albums that he are kind of a part of this like release cycle. It kind of gives it
Yeah.
a like a distinct edge.
For some
There's a
reason, I
quote
thought
I
he was in Eric's Trip, but I guess not. That does not seem to be the case on Wikipedia.
yeah, I don't know.
It looks like he was in some other act with Julie,
Yeah,
but I'm not seeing a whole lot for him.
it says he
There's
produced 2 of her solo albums.
it looks like this is just um, based on Rate Your Music, which isn't always the most trustworthy source for information, but apparently a Shotgun and Jaybird is the name of like a band that he was in with Julie Dworin
Mm,
in like the early 2000s, it seems. But I don't think it's that. Um, none of it seems that popular. If I had to guess, I would say that he's probably more of like a friend of Julie's that she was like, let's like bring this guy onto it or something like that.
yeah. Also, correcting myself, he was not. He did not produce, but he was just a collaborator.
Mm.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, like I mean, I think there's a lot of places to kind of like dive into Lost Wisdom, but I think the first song, just Lost Wisdom, the title track is really interesting because I think it's one of Phil's like best songs for sure, and it seems like maybe the only one. I don't know if this is the case or not, but it's one of the only ones that I feel like was written explicitly for this album, as opposed to him sort of just kind of sifting through his back catalog and finding songs to record with Julie. This one feels like very directly like it's supposed to be on this project.
Yeah.
Yeah, Burning Home feels that way to me too. Like, yeah, he'd played around with the kind of let's get out of the romance idea a lot, but
Yeah,
I don't know. It feels like this iteration was made for this release.
I think you can tell that when there are actual like segments for Julie to sing. It's not just backing vocals for her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I think she sings like is it Who, where she sings like the entire first verse by herself. Um, I think it just like works really well
yeah,
with her voice and everything. But yeah, I was listening to the song "What" last night, and I was like reading along with the lyrics, and I didn't notice this before, but and this also might just be my like dumb brain, but it there's like it seems like 5 the Glow Part 2 references on "What." Like it's like almost every single lyric from that song shows up somewhere on like the Glow Part 2 and like some
huh.
other like there's he's talking about like
I
being
noticed one, uh, which is
yeah, there's
I'll
the "I'll
not
not
contain
contain
you.
you."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I noticed I'll not contain you.
There's something about like breathing someone in to like your
Yeah,
lungs blinded by your light. I feel like shows up somewhere on there. And then there's like the "I know nothing now that I know you," which is I think specifically pulled from like some No Flashlight song. It just feels like a I feel like the song is like the nexus of all the Mount Eerie inner
Yeah.
discography connections. Like half the lines here are pulled from somewhere else in his discography.
It's also
Um,
really sweet.
yeah,
As is You Swan Go On. You
yeah,
Swan
that's
Go On is very sweet. This is
Mhm.
kind of like a romantic album.
it.
At
Really
least for
is.
Phil, like it's probably his most romantic.
Yeah, You Swan Go On is just such like it's like kind of cute almost. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
There's
That
another one
might be
too.
my favorite track on Lost Wisdom.
That's a good opinion. I love You Swan Go On, and I love that it's like 90 seconds long only. It's like such a short song, but it's just like so it just does what it needs to do so concisely that it's like
Yeah.
it's just such like a satisfying song even though it's so short.
Yeah, I've never noticed it was that short actually.
A lot of the songs on Lost Wisdom are like that. Like I think maybe 4 or 5 songs on here are like under 2 minutes. um like he really, and I feel like this is something he sort of does in general that I've always appreciated about his music is just he has an idea and he records that idea and it never overstays its welcome. It like says what it needs to say and does what it needs to do and then like the song is over, and I kind
Yeah.
of respect that attitude towards writing songs. I feel like or at least he is able to do it well consistently.
Yeah.
I do like though that he's always able to cling to certain songs and go back and want to re-record them in
Yeah,
different ways. It feels like different versions of a painting or new edits to a poem or what have you.
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's all very interconnected. Like you can follow the thread to like I feel like there's, I mean, I don't want to say every one of his songs, but yeah, there's so many of his
Yeah.
songs
Like
that are connected somewhere
Hmm.
else.
the context of his discography is actually really important in every work, which is why we're doing this.
Yes.
Or at least part of it, like part of why Phil in particular is such a good artist for this kind of like series is this, that like everything's sort of interconnected, and like everything is in some way like defined by what came before, not necessarily defined, but it's just part of the context, like even when you get to some of these, the newer releases, the death songs, like who forms the basis of two paintings by Nikolai Astrup, which is
Yeah.
another one of my favorite Mount Eerie songs.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And then Soria Moria has that really important interpolation of the moon.
Yep.
um
Actually,
History
so
is always alive in Phil's music,
Yeah,
and I really appreciate that.
yeah.
so Phil did a AMA on Indieheads like 2 or 3 years ago, and I actually asked him this question specifically, and he had an interesting answer. I won't read it exactly, but I basically was like asking him about like the callbacks he does to previously released material and whether that happens when like one of his new songs happens to touch on something thematically that he's still trying to explore, or if he like intentionally seeks out to interwave his discography in that way. And he gave a very simple response. He just said, "Nothing is ever finished, both in songs but also just in life. It's all just a big compost pile."
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's nice.
yeah, that's good.
Um, Grave Robbers, beautiful song. Ever heard that one?
I
Great song.
have.
Great tune.
Yeah, slaps.
It's yeah, it's a banger for sure. There's no way around it. Yeah, I don't know. It's similar to Don. It's like some of these. It's like a certain level of complexity here. That they're almost like some of the lyrics on Dawn of Lost Wisdom are almost impenetrable to me, where it's like I can read them and be like, oh yes, this is very beautifully written. Like I like the lyrics to this song, but then at the same time be like, I have no idea what this means
Yeah,
or what it's trying to say. I just like how it sounds.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that kind of extends to a lot of Flaming Home. Like there's a lot of just like one liners that I could pull out and be like, man, that's such a cool line, without really like, I don't know. I feel like Phil is like a very wise soul and his like power levels are too high for me sometimes to fully grasp. But I can sit back and like appreciate it.
Yeah.
How do we feel about, I know we've mentioned it a couple of times already, but Julie Doiron's presence on this record as just sort of a thematic kind of, angle to it.
I know what you mean because there is something that I think concretely changes when you add not necessarily just Julie specifically, but just another person to these songs in general. Whereas on Dawn, they seem a lot more personal and like very introspective, and like Phil kind of dealing his way through these very like personal emotions. And then when you add Julie into the mix, and you just get another like human perspective, I guess they seem a little less internal, I guess, and a little more external. Like he's I don't know, talking more about like universal truths than just his own like personal feelings on things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
yeah. I There's something that is always sort of kind of taught in creative writing workshops, is that, find a way to make your own personal thread this sort of more universal theme to it. And a lot of the time, it's people find that through discussing certain events or discussing certain happenings that, people can feel sympathy or empathy towards. But on this record, I love how Phil is able to do it in just bringing another person to the table, and just having that be that universality is
yeah,
really, poignant and touching.
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. It like I think I said something similar to this earlier, but I feel like it really grounds the songs like in reality. Whereas if it were just Phil, it might seem a little more like rambly and existential, I guess, than maybe it sounds when there's like other people on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think I said something earlier to the extent of um, Julie helps Phil kind of carry that weight of the record.
Yeah, the Phil's isolation is like a significant part of what makes Dawn Dawn,
Yeah,
and this like is closure to that in a way.
yeah. This record feels like the sun finally actually coming up from dawn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I do kind of like that, and I feel like that um it's interesting. Like the chronology of this is interesting as well because both Lost Wisdom and Dawn came out in 2008. But all the songs here, I think, or maybe at least most of them were written probably 4 or 5 years earlier. Like I think he was
Yeah.
doing the Norway thing in like 2004 or something like that. So these songs are kind of like old, and they had been kind of like bouncing around here and there for like several years. And it seems like it wasn't until Lost Wisdom when it somehow clicked in some way that like allowed him to release it as like a fully realized project like 4 or 5
Yeah.
years later.
Yeah.
So I agree with the kind of like it almost is some sort of closure or something.
I think these are, I don't know. These two albums are really central to his discography in a way that I don't feel like they're necessarily looked at as. At least just like the I don't know, in the way that like there is this like distinct narrative that starts with like kind of, it was hot, moves through the glow, moves through um Mount Eerie, uh and it kind of ends here. It like it doesn't totally end, obviously, like Phil said, big compost pile, but like I
It
don't know, this
definitely
very much feels like an important moment, I guess.
well, yeah, because the next album that he would release after Dawn and Lost Wisdom, like the next real album, is Wind's Poem, which is sort of like a massive shift in direction. I think
Yeah.
both in I don't know so much about like the lyrics, but definitely in terms of like how it sounds and how it's structured. Um, like this, I can definitely see the argument that like whatever the ethos was behind the like microphone's style of songwriting or whatever he was doing before, it almost does feel like capped off here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this is the last of those songs before he would go on to do like weird drony like metal stuff.
Yeah. Why would he choose a compost pile of all things to compare it to? Why a compost pile?
Well, it's perfect actually, because compost piles, like they don't stop, and like there's always stuff at the top that's still rotting, and then when you get the dirt, you're getting it from the bottom, but that's not like, I don't know, the compost pile never becomes a different compost pile.
That's true, I guess. But
I
also
don't know.
the
It connected for
the
me.
rest of that comparison is every new song is just rotten and he's just tossing on.
Sorry, I zoned out the last 30 seconds because my girlfriend came in the room to inform me that I purchased the incorrect yogurt when I went grocery shopping yesterday.
Oh no.
I know.
What was wrong about the yogurt?
It was vanilla and it was supposed to be plain yogurt. I
Oh
didn't see it on the
no.
label.
Oh.
Fucked up, guys.
All right. I think I've said my piece about these records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I agree. Like, I mean, honestly, I feel like these two are, in my opinion, some of the hardest to talk about so far. I feel like there's a certain amount of like mystery to them.
Yeah, there was definitely a hurdle to get over. Even like, I don't know, it's unfortunate that like I guess I wonder if we would have resumed this series any sooner if we'd ended off on like literally any other episode.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is sort of daunting to think about because it's like
Yeah.
you have to sort of
It's
you have
daunting.
to just daunting.
Daunting. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hey. But yeah, it's like you have to sort of like tackle the themes head on in a way that isn't like
Yeah.
I guess really necessary with some of his other material. So
It was,
um
yeah, like there's so much less to talk about the instrumentation. I don't think we talked about the instrumentation of Dawn at all.
yeah, I mean yeah,
you
because there's
know?
not really much to
Yeah.
say other than like it's a guitar on it.
Yeah.
So um
That's
I mean it's a nylon string guitar, which is
Yeah.
objectively superior to a steel string guitar in my opinion. But that's all I've got to say about that, I think.
there's always an irony to Phil, I think, that his most like sonically minimalist and you would think therefore accessible ones end up being the ones that just kind of tear you to shreds.
Right. Yeah. Well, um, is there any other sort of like housekeeping internal things like we would need to mention? I don't even know what the next episode is
um,
supposed to be.
I believe we are scheduled. Wait, wait. I'm pretty sure the next one is in fact Wynn's poem. Although we
Cool.
might have been doing an interlude. There it is. I have a million folders in my notes app. I was just looking for the podcast one. Yep. Next is Wynn's poem and Black Wind Ceiling opening. Oh, also we wanted to shout out I think double whammy. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is reissuing frequent microphones collaborator Mira's first album,
Oh yeah.
um, which seems cool, and you should check it out. It is called, what is it called? I think it's You Think It's Like This, but really it's like this.
Let me
Yep, yeah. You think it's like this, but really it's like this.
heck yeah.
I haven't dug into it yet because I've been prepping for this. But it's I've listened to the first few songs and they were pretty great.
Mira makes good music, and I should listen to it more, and you should listen to it more.
Yes.
There's one song she had that was like used in some promotional advertisement for the first season of American Horror Story,
Interesting.
which is how I was first introduced to Mir music. I think it's called Special Death, which is actually um, on an album that Phil like helped make. So good stuff.
Oh, and Phil is actually so it's like a 20th anniversary edition. There's a whole second LP, and the second LP is just covers of the album. And Phil contributed a cover.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
as Mount Eerie,
As Mount Eerie.
notably, which wouldn't have been weird up until the whole microphones in 2020 announcement. Just or I guess wouldn't have been in question at all. But yes, he did in fact cover it as Mount Eerie.
There you go.
I think we're good.
All right. Good stuff. Well, we'll see ya when we see ya. Some point in the next certain amount of time.
Yeah, I think we can shoot for next Friday.
Sure. Cool.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening. Thank you, Dill, for coming
Of
on
course.
and talking with
Of
us.
course. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Goodbye.